All right, the skeletal or the skeletal system. Different ways of pronouncing it. What is the skeletal system and what does it do? Well, Dammy here with his bag of cheesies is going to tell us all about it. Yes, he is flexing his muscles there in that picture. All right, what is the skeletal system and what does it do? The skeleton has a few purposes. Framework for the body, internal organ protection, system of levers for movement, okay? So if you know a little bit about kind of rudimentary, basic sort of science principles, a lever, right? You pull a lever, whatever, it's attached in certain ways and does work, or pulls things, or lifts things, or whatever. So a system of levers, okay? The skeleton, the bones. Also storage of minerals. And we'll talk more about these as we move through the notes. Get a pen? Make sure you're writing this down. Okay, keep up, please. Thank you. A baby has over 300 bones, but adults only have 206. Now that's crazy, isn't it? That's because by the time you're an adult, many of the bones that babies have fused together, and so two bones become one, and so on. And so in lots of different parts, babies are quite a bit more malleable, and partially the design purpose behind that is probably, they're much more flexible because they got to get out of the body, and sometimes that's a little tough to squeeze out. If you think about it, babies can contort when they are being born into like drastically, and so not saying that this is why, but could be part of the reason. For sure, in the skull, a lot of those bones are separate in the skull because there's growth that has to happen, and so the brain gets bigger, and so the bones sort of move a little bit. You can feel soft spots in babies' heads. Have you ever noticed that? Anybody know about that? So you can usually feel a soft spot where there's a gap between the skull bones. Bones need to be able to move relative to each other, so we need joints. So joints are where the bones meet and are able to move without friction and jarring and stuff. Because if you had two bones and they were, just covered in skin, and they would be crunching each other and chipping off and stuff. So the joints are the in-between parts. All right, types of bones. Long bones. There are many types of bones. Long bones are found in the legs and arms. The biggest bone in your body, anybody know which one it is?
Femur.
The femur, yeah, this one of these on your leg. That's a big bone. Short bones are small cube-shaped bones in the wrist, ankles, and toes. So, as you see on this Mr. Skeleton behind us here, there's lots of little bones in the fingers and in the wrist. Even the vertebrae too. I think those are special bones, like they call them special bone types. But in the ankles, I think it's tough for me to bring this up. This guy's pretty flexible, this guy. So the feet bones is all these little bones in the toes and little bones in the foot there. Okay. Flat bones. What about flat bones? They're found in the shoulder blades, pelvis, and skull. So shoulder blades, back here, big long flat bone. The pelvis, okay, kind of your midsection, that bony framework in your midsection there. And in your skull, of course, flat bones that make up your skull. Irregular bones, the fourth type is irregular bones, and so the vertebrae, okay, are irregular bones. Very special. They allow the back to move, arc and do different things, and there's little layers of protection, cartilage, and discs in between there that allow them to move. And probably my favorite set of bones in the body is the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. And you'll study more of these in Physical Science 20 when you take it, because you're not taking it now. No, you are, but you're doing chemistry first. Are you guys, what grade are you guys at? 10? I'll forget it. It's the grade 11, so you guys take that in grade 11 then.
Yeah.
Right? You're taking it. Okay. So yeah, you'll learn about the bones of the inner ear, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The kind of the common names are hammer, anvil, and stirrup. You can tell why this one is called a stirrup, probably, right here. And the hammer, this is the hammer. This is the anvil that it kind of is pressed up against, and the stirrup. So these are the tiniest bones in your body. They're deep in your inner ear. They're like super tiny. And I gotta say, it's amazing the design behind these bones, because they work together so finely and precisely. You think about it, sound waves are enough to trigger these bones, and those little vibrations are used to magnify the sound into waves in your cochlea, in your inner ear, that actually your brain can interpret. So it's a very fine-tuned system here of amplifying sound vibrations in the air to make little vibrations. There's little hairs involved, and there's fluid inside inner like the cochlea, which is a sort of a snail-shaped sort of organ where there's fluid in there, and it's pretty cool. You'll learn about that later, but these are some of my favorite little bones in the body. Yeah.
So, if someone's deaf or hard with hearing, would something be wrong with that then?
Deaf or hard of hearing, not necessarily these bones. There'd be something wrong, but they could be. But these are pretty protected inside. This little part right here, I should comment. There is your eardrum. If you heard your eardrum, right? So through your ear canal, there's this sort of disc. It's kind of like a paper disc almost. And when the sound waves come in, they tap that little disc, and this taps this little bone, which translates that into these bones. And then it actually moves fluid, so it's it makes waves, and there's little hairs inside the fluid kind of space, and those hairs, how they move and how they're connected, send signals to your brain. It's crazy. You couldn't even imagine to build something like this efficient, and it just happens over and over with every new person that's born, and it's amazing. Yeah, question?
I know people who don't have one of those bones.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh sure. There's defects where these bones are missing, right, or damaged or whatever. Generally, this is pretty deep inside your ear, so typical hearing loss is not these bones. But yes, of course, if these bones are out of whack at all, you've got problems. There's also, which, because this is my favorite part of the body probably, there's also called semicircular canals, and they're basically 3 loops that are in different orientations, and they are partially filled with fluid. And the level of the fluid inside those tubes tells your brain if you are sideways or if you're straight up and down or in all these different positions. So when you move your head like this, obviously gravity pulls on your head at different ways, and you feel different sensations. Well, if you think about a tube that's mostly filled with water where there's a little bubble on top, like a level works that way. If the bubble is right in the middle, then it's level, but if you go like this, the bubble moves, right? So you have a bubble in your inner ear in 3 different axes, 3 different directions, and your body can tell exactly kind of where you are in space when you move your head around. It's I can tell I'm going forward and I'm down a bit. It sends all these signals to your brain to help you navigate where you are in space. So just some super cool stuff. But that's for later. Biology class, physical science 20, you'll run into that a bit. Okay. And I think on my website, if you want to go look, I've written a song about the bones of the inner ear, and you can go look at you can go look at that. No, not right now, but maybe there will be some rendition performed for you. It's been a long time since I sang that song, but bones of the inner ear, the malleus, incus, and stapes. Okay, it's a love song. No, it's not. All right, next page. Let's keep going. All right, the sesame seed bones. Oh wait, what? It looks like sesame seed to me. It looks like sesame seed buns, there's a McDonald's something going on here. Sesamoid. Sesamoid. It's not sesame seed. Sesamoid. But it looks like sesame seed to me. Located near a tendon, like the kneecap, which is also, the actual name is the patella. So the kneecap, these little bones here have also special functions. So let's see if we can zoom in here. So your kneecap, this little bone here is attached to the front of your knee, so that if you fall down or if you kneel down, you're not, putting pressure on the cartilage or different meniscus. Do you guys know about MCL and ACL injuries? Those of you that are in sports. So the MCL, I think, is the medial. So what's medial? Is that inside or outside?
Inside.
Inside. Yeah, medial. And then the ACL, I think it's anterior. Anterior. Anyways, it's the outside. So it's MCL and ACL, right? Yeah, MCL and ACL. So if you have some cartilage damage, that's a typical place where things break down if you wreck your knee. Yeah. Sesame seed bones, good. 2 patties on a sesame seed bone. Bones have extensions and depressions in them where tendons and muscle attach. I believe now, we talk about extension, we talked about depression yesterday, about the different movements. This is not movements. I believe that they're talking about here, the reference is to a bone has a bit of an extension so that the muscles, the tendons can attach, and a bit of a depression, like a bit of a cave in a little bit. So they're built a little bit different so that the parts of the tendons can attach efficiently. So these are not talking about movements like we've been talking about recently. And it's not a very good picture, but you can kind of see in your elbow or in your some of those bones, they're kind of like carved in a little bit. Sometimes they have protrusions, that kind of thing. So they're shaped specifically to do the job that they're meant to do. Awesome. Bone marrow. Okay, you probably heard about bone marrow. This is inside the bone, okay? Inside the bone. I grew up on the farm, and we had cattle and all sorts of animals, so I had lots of opportunity to see bones around from different animals that had died and whatever. And I from a very small kid, I have seen the inside of bones. And they kind of have this really honeycombed kind of structure inside bones. And that's partially so that they're not that heavy. Like if your bone was like solid material all the way through the whole time, I mean, you would weigh 800 pounds. Like you'd be heavy. These would be like heavy bones. So a lot of birds' bones have large cavities in them so that they can be light, so that it's easier for them to fly. But I'm not saying these are all empty space, but the bone is not necessarily solid. And inside, you'll see that there's marrow that is generated or created inside, the bone. Where am I going? All right. So inside the bone is something called marrow. Red marrow is actually where red blood cells are created. I don't know if you guys knew that. Parts of your blood are created inside your bones. And yellow marrow contains fat cells. Look at that. Your bones are making you fat. Yes, it's true. Not really. Red blood cells, yeah. So the big thing is, and have you heard of a bone marrow transplant? Have you heard of that? Yeah. So, yeah, if the marrow is not working like it should or creating what it should, sometimes you can get a transplant and can start generating new stuff. All right, bone locations in the head. Bones in the head are called cranial bones. Cranial bones. They are joined along lines called sutures. These are loose at birth and fuse as you get older. So I mentioned that earlier. The babies have different cranial bones that are separate, and you can find spots where there's no bones. It's really kind of freaky, actually. But as you grow, the bones grow as well, and then they fuse, which is great. Makes us stronger. I mean, your brain is pretty important, right? So it would make sense that you would have some pretty strong bones protecting the pretty important part of your body. And think about it. If you think about a bridge, right? Now, again, where's my pen? Oh, it's under here somewhere. So if you think about a bridge or an arch of some sort, if you put bricks, this is going to be really terrible, but if you put bricks kind of like this on an arch, okay, and they kind of all press together in this, this is really terrible, I'm sorry, but in this sort of fashion here, then this is actually a super strong structure, okay? And then you have just regular, all the way down here. So this part right here, okay, in a curved structure where the gravity is pressing the bricks onto each other. So it's really hard to break through because gravity and any pressure that's on it makes it stronger. So if you think about your skull, being a round fused, bones, like, round fused bones, that's pretty strong, pretty reliably strong structure. So obviously, in a major accident, a fall, a car accident, something like that, you can break these bones, but generally you get a knock on the head, it's not going to break your skull. It's pretty strong. So I think that's pretty cool. That the design of sort of this arched, strength is built into our heads. I mean, we don't have square heads. Think about that. We don't have square heads. If we had square heads, we're like a robot. But like this is pretty weak because this is just a straight span. But if you've got a round head, right, then that's actually the same principle as this arch principle. It's super strong. Now, what about a triangular head? What if you had a triangular head? Well, if you had a triangular head, you might not be as happy. Hats would be different shape for sure. But still, well, this is devolving quickly. What about a parallelogram? Hey, rhombus head. What? Hey. Yeah, rhombus head. Okay. Have you heard of some of these words before?
Yeah.
The frontal, oh boy. Sphenoid, ethmoid, occipital, I've heard that one. Temporal, okay, your temple bone. And parietal or parietal. Cool. Bones, cool. All right, bone locations. Vertebrae. So somebody should name their kid Vertebrae. That just sounds like it's a very distinguished name. Vertebrae. Come here and give me some tea, Vertebrae. Doesn't that sound like very distinguished? Sounds like the queen of the kings. Vertebrae. Come hither. Anyways. Bones in the back are called vertebrates. So we are vertebrate. Vertebrates, we have a vertebrae. You've heard of that? Animals that are vertebrates have a vertebrae. So each bone is called a vertebrate. The vertebrae would be plural, I guess, of vertebrate. Each is a disc segment separated from the next disc by a cushion of cartilage. All right. So on Mr. Skeleton here, you can kind of see through his, through his guts that aren't there. Sorry, if you're watching this video, you won't be able to see it probably, but anyways, in between each of the vertebrae bones, you have a clear cartilage disc. And if you have a bulged disc, or if you've slipped a disc, or if you have disc problems in your back, what's happened is the nice, soft, cushy disc between your vertebrae, between your bones here like this, something's happened that this soft, cushy disc that's supposed to be keeping your bones separated, it's been damaged. Or literally, I actually had a bulged disc maybe 8 or 10 years ago. Yes, it happened during a staff-student basketball game at a pep rally. I totally slipped a disc. Went up for a layup and came down. Bad. Spent the rest of the day teaching, mind you, but I could not go off vertical. I could not move this way. It's excruciating pain. So I was like literally going up and down like, oh, let me grab my book here. And I was like literally like this. So anyway, so what happened was when I came down, so let's say this is your vertebrae and you have like your spine. Oops, it's not like that. It's not a point, but like this is your bone, and then you have this disc right here that's supposed to be soft and cushy to separate kind of the next one, right? So what happened was basically the down pressure here or whatever, and it's I don't know which way it squished, but it basically squished this thing so that it was not this shape. It was more like this, and it bulged out. So it kind of like was. So it kind of went this way and bulged out a bit, and it was like pressing on. So this is your spinal column probably in here, I guess. So it was, yeah, ish. So it was pressing on nerves, and they would make it really, really hurt. So I don't think a bulged disc can actually paralyze you, but if your spinal column here is yeah, that's not good. So anyways, that's what that was. So I had to basically be real easy on my back and do a series of exercises that kind of basically squished it back over here. So it would like squish back into place. I don't know. It's pretty good now, ish. Okay, there's 5 sections. Stay focused. 5 sections. You guys have this, or did you fill this in already?
You got
Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum, and coccyx. Coccyx. Your coccyx, I think, is your tailbone. That's a moniker. It's not a tailbone, but it's nicknamed the tailbone at the very bottom of your spine there. So the cervical is up by the head. The dorsal, I think this is another name for thoracic. The lumbar here. So that's kind of the small of your back, right above your waist. And the sacrococcygeal, maybe that's how it's pronounced. But that's the very, very base there. Questions? Yep.
What does it mean when it's like 5 en dash arrow 1?
Okay, so that I think that's just like the number of bones, I believe. So 5 to I don't know if it's 5 to greater than 1, so it's greater than 1, less than 5.
It might be an arrow. Maybe you have more when you're.
It could be an arrow. Yep.
Maybe you have more when you're an athlete.
Yeah, it probably. These are probably bones that fuse, I would say. That could be. Yeah, I think that's maybe what that. I think that is supposed to be an arrow, actually. Yeah. So they fuse. I think that's correct. So if I find out any different, I'll let you know. I'll look into that further. Okay. Good question. The chest. Okay, the bones of the chest consist of the clavicle, the scapula, and the sternum. The clavicle, I think that's your collarbone. The regular, the common name is the collarbone. Okay, that's your clavicle. So it's this bone that everybody can feel right here, just from your throat here, right over here. This is this big bone right here. So if you get hit, if you're in a car accident, if you're playing a heavy contact sport, this could be broken. Correct. Yeah. Happened to you guys. Yeah. Yeah, you did that? Yeah. In football?
Yeah, but it's flag football.
Oh, it's flag football. Oh, really? Flag football. Yeah. Flag football can be dangerous too. You don't have any real equipment on. Your sternum, your big middle bone here, your sternum. And the scapula is like your shoulder blade, your scapula. All right? Bone locations. Pelvic bone is actually 3 fused bones. The ilium, again, the ischium, I don't know if this pronunciation, this one, to be honest, and the pubis bone. Okay? So males and females are shaped a little differently. There's a larger opening in females for birth. Generally, a little bit wider birth canal, built a little bit differently that way. Women generally have wider, hips. They're a little bit more, they're skinnier, and then their hips are a little bit wider, which is due in part to just the shape of the pelvis there. And the angles of the, where's the, yeah, so there's different shapes. Okay? Yeah. Male, female, men and women are different. Okay? They are. Lots of differences. Okay, questions? All right. Appendages, that's just a fancy name for kind of your attachments, like hands and arms and stuff, your appendages, legs, arms, that kind of thing. So your appendages are mostly long bones of the body, so your arms and legs. Bones are alive. Bones are living tissue, actually. They contain cells called osteocytes, O-S-T-E-O-C-Y-T-E-S. osteocytes. This is soft connective tissue within the bone. You don't have to know these parts, but inside the bone, all right, growth plates and growth. Growth plates, they also contain cartilage with epiphyseal discs, growth plates. I think that's epiphyseal. Again, there may be some variation in pronunciation by different people. Guys, hey, no talking, please. As you age, the cartilage is used up and the bone grows in length. This stops between 18 and 25. So you can continue growing up until the age of 25. You grow up until about 18, most people, and then that's when you stop growing. But some people can keep growing until they're up to 25 years old. So most people stop growing around 18. And actually, ladies, a lot of you will stop growing well before 18. I had a girl in my class in grade 6. Okay, funny story. She was a giant. Like, she was bigger than any one of us guys. Our class picture went like this. This guy, Nicole. This guy. Like, she was massive. Like, I'm not talking about big, I'm talking about tall. Like, super tall. By grade 12, here's the guys. Here's Nicole, same size. She was in grade 6, like, seriously. Like, we went like this. I didn't go very far, but we went like this, and she did not grow a millimeter after grade 6, I'm sure. So, anyways, everybody has a little different rate of growth, but generally, when you reach adulthood, you stop growing. Makes sense? Does that make sense? Yes? Migration instinct? Any of this ringing a bell? That was Sid the Sloth, by the way. You got that? Okay. You got, yeah, Sid the Sloth. Okay, bones growth. Bone density increases until you turn about 35, and at that point, the bone density starts to decrease. All right, so easier to break a bone, blah, blah, blah. Your bones start to deteriorate just a little bit, so which affects joints and movement and stuff like that. So this picture here, a normal bone, okay, fairly dense. An osteoporotic bone is a lot less dense. That's a problem. That's just not regular aging. I don't think that's pretty sparse right there. Question.
If the bone density starts decreasing after 35, and how do these athletes all play to like 40 nowadays?
Well, it's not because of bone density. There's not very many athletes that play past 35. Yeah, and if they do, they get hurt more. Yeah, there's more pain they deal with. There's more training they have to deal with. But yeah, as soon as you hit 35, it doesn't mean you can't play sports, guys. But there's a reason why in your 30s that guys start break bones and they don't play much past that. So if you're a professional athlete, you're old in your 30s. Like once you get to mid 30s, you're phasing out. Yes, question.
Just about that ankle. Like when you're like older, why doesn't it like look like you're like shrinking?
Okay, yeah, that's good question. So when you're older, why does it look like you're shrinking? Well, bone density is part of it. There's just shrinkage in your bones. Your joints, okay? So you think about it, if you have when you're young, you got, big, cartilage joints between your spine and stuff. Over time, it starts to wear down. It starts to get like a thin little pancake. So if you lose a few millimeters on each vertebrae, you think about that. You lose a few millimeters on each vertebrae, and you've got inches, right? So and plus the curvature, right? Curvature of the spine, just basically gravity pushes people down over the years, and so you kind of get there's a curvature and there's like shrinking of bones, and so it all kind of adds up a little bit, all kind of combines.
The skin shrinks.
Yeah.
If you have body fat though.
Yeah. The skin probably wouldn't contribute much to your height. But yeah, skin would change as well for sure. It's mostly joints and cartilage and bones. Okay, guys, let's keep going. You guys are doing great. Keep focused, please. Joints are points. Wow, somebody knows how to rhyme. Joints are points where bones connect. Some joints allow for a lot of movement. These are connected by ligaments. Others allow very little movement. These are typically connected by cartilage. So, in certain where bones meet, there's not a lot of movement that's required there. So there's not a lot of extra ligaments that allow for large, movement. They're stuck close together. Can you think of any parts of your body, bone to bone, where you would require very little movement, where you'd actually want very little movement? Can you think of any of that? Where? Yeah. In your ear. Okay, your ear is mostly cartilage. Notice Mr. Skeletor over there has no ear. So, the muscles move. So muscles are attached around. So ears are mostly cartilage, okay? But yes, you don't want your ears to move around too much. That's true.
Why?
Yep.
Your ribs.
Okay, ribs. Yeah, you don't want a lot of flexing in your ribs, right? You breathe and you're right? You want that to be fairly stationary. So that's a very good one. Yeah. What else?
Totally question. For people who are double jointed,
Yeah.
how would that work? Where they can move their joints in different ways?
Well, double jointed is kind of a misnomer. It's not. Nobody has two joints there, but there's more movement than probably is ideal. So if someone's double jointed, you can do different things like move your fingers different ways, or they can bend different ways, or whatever. They can kind of flip and go further around, or whatever it is. Then there's just a little bit more movement there. So the cartilage might be a little more elastic. There could be, just not as much adhesion there. There could be looser sort of tendons that are there. Could be just really loose and not very tight. So good question. I don't know the full answer to that, but there's not two joints, that's for sure. Double joint is I don't know where that came. I think when people do their shoulders or whatever, and I can't do that, but you know what I mean? It's like you're popping at a joint. It's going to the other joint. No, it's not going to the other joint. It's just yeah. That's about the best answer I can give you that. But question? Yeah.
I was just gonna say the spine.
Oh, the spine. Okay. So you want a little bit of movement of the spine, right? You can arch your back and you can move like this, but not a whole ton. Yes, very good. Yeah, for sure. Like your elbow, your shoulder, lots of movement, right? Those ones, like your ankle, lots of movement. But some of these other joints, that's very good.
Nose.
Your nose. Guys, your nose is mostly cartilage, Mr. Skeletor. Okay, the bones actually stop well before your protruding nose. This stuff that seems pretty hard, like you can get back to your bone back there, but it's a lot of your nose is mostly really thick cartilage. And again, think about it, the way we were designed, your eyes, pretty tender, pretty special. They're inset into your head and surrounded by this. What is it? What bone is this? The occipital, I think, is back here. But anyways, you're this one. I can't remember the name, but you know what I mean. Like, so if you get a punch, or you get if you bump into something, it doesn't gouge your eye out, right? There's protection there. So your nose, it sticks out, right? You fall over, you break your nose, you don't crack your whole head. You know what I mean? So your nose, it's kind of like almost a buffer. Like it's there, it's got a purpose, but you should be pretty thankful it's not a solid bone right to the tip. Because if you hit your head on anything, you could crack that bone and be major, big deal, right? So we'd be thankful how we're made. Another question? So the question was, if you break your nose, what does that really mean? The framework of the nose consists of bone and cartilage, two small nasal bones. So there is small bones in there. Two small nasal bones and extensions of the maxillae form the bridge of the nose, which is the bony portion. So the part that kind of bumps out on some of you guys, like this part, there would be little bones in there, but they're, I think, basically stuck in surrounding cartilage. So it's not connected to your skull, I guess. The remainder of the framework is cartilage, flexible portion, connective tissue, and skin. So let's see here. Tough to tell. Yeah, it doesn't really. So the nasal, yeah. It's mostly cartilage. So it looks like there might be 2 small nasal bones that are kind of like this part right here. So can you break those bones, I guess? Yeah. If you break your nose, it could be just those little bones in here. Yeah. Yeah, that could be what it is. Because I mean, you like that's pretty hard, right? That's, you can tell that's, you know, cartilage, and then this is a little harder. So 2 little nasal bones there. Yeah. Okay, diseases of the skeletal system. Fractures. The skeletal or the skeletal system, excuse me, has a few kinds of maladies. Maladies are just a fancy word for problems, basically, afflictions. The most common type is a fracture, but there are also diseases that affect the bones as well. Many kinds of fractures, and here are some of the more common types. So if you've broken a bone, or if you've just had a crack in your bone, this is what we're talking about. So a closed fracture is a break with no wound. So your bone could break inside, I guess, with no external wound. You might be able to, like in this diagram, you might be able to see that, hey, your arm is like got a bend in it that it's not supposed to have. So it could be that. An open fracture, that's a compound fracture also called, is a break with a wound. And in some cases, the bone can actually be sticking out. Find where you are. All right. Simple fracture. A simple fracture, another name for it is hairline fracture. Just barely a crack. So the bone hasn't moved at all, but there's a little bit of a crack. A large amount of bone breaks are simple fractures. Simple fracture. A complex fracture. This is the separation of the bone, usually requiring surgery. So if the bones, no, this would be really painful. The bone breaks sort of longitudinally up and down there. That would be really terrible.
How would that happen?
Well, if you think about it, if you get crushed or something like on like your bone, like if you get if this is your bone and you get crushed from the top, you know, like this, it could like split it like a log of wood kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, very. I would say very rare, but a break from some kind of side impact, you know, to break or dislodge the bone would be the most common. Anyways, that's a complex fracture. Usually requires some kind of surgery. Green stick fracture. This is an incomplete break. Green stick. I think back to this diagram here would be something like this, maybe. Kind of like a break, but it's not all the way through. In this diagram, if we zoom in, you can kind of see it's broken, but not all the way through on this side. So obviously there was an impact or something from over here, and it broke the bone on the other side, but it didn't break it all the way through. So that's called a green stick fracture. See ya. A comminuted fracture. Comminuted. That's a tough word. Comminuted fracture. A break where the bone is shattered. So if we're talking like car accidents or falling from like a building or something, like where you really do major damage. It doesn't happen very often, but if the bone is shattered, comminuted fracture. I'm not sure if that's pronounced right. That's a weird word. Okay, a Coles break. Coles, C-O-L-L-E-S. A Coles fracture is a break of the radius at the wrist. So there's 2 bones in your arms, the radius and the ulna. The radius at the wrist is a Coles break. There's dislocation too, yeah. But a break is, I mean, if you fall or get pounded on something, like if you lots of impact on your wrist, you could break it right at the bend part there. So Coles fracture. All right, a complicated fracture. Extensive soft tissue damage. So the bone breaks and it damages the tissues around, the muscles, the blood vessels, the tendons, everything. So the broken bone is not only broken, but it's moved in such a way that it also damages the tissue. I don't even know what body part that is, but impacted fracture. The end of the break drives into another bone. So again, like car accidents, there's lots of crazy stuff that happens in car accidents, right? But if you get your shoulder jammed, in this case, and your bone basically drives into the other bone and causes it to break, that's an impacted fracture. The end of the break drives into another bone. Yeah, especially if your bone breaks and then it continues on to hit something else. That's more specifically, I guess. All right, a compression fracture. Compression is just a squeezing. A compression fracture is a break in one or more vertebrae. Surgery can add metal fusion brackets. So, yeah, if you fall from a distance or have some kind of compression fracture, you may have to have surgery with screws or with plates or something put in there to keep your bones separated while they heal. Okay, spiral fracture. Ew. Spiral fracture. The bone is broken in a wrist. It's in a twist. Sorry, wrist. It's in a twist, so it's kind of a spiral fracture. So there's a twist and a break. That's a spiral fracture. Pretty self-explanatory, I'd say. Okay, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is the softening of the bones due to a lack of calcium. The bones get soft and curved and whatever. So, yeah, your bones can really experience some curvature if they get softer. And remember, like I said earlier, the older you get, gravity takes more effect, and the softening of the bones also and the curvature. Okay, what's so funny, guys? Nothing? Okay, could have fooled me. You guys are laughing pretty hard. All right. Okay, osteomyelitis. Osteomyelitis is when bacteria infect the bone. So, tough picture to see here, but if you have bacterial growth in your bone or in a joint or something like that, that's bad. So osteo is bone, myelitis. Arthritis, you guys have all heard about arthritis. It's an inflammation of the joints. Osteoarthritis is a degradation of the joints. Rheumatoid arthritis is systemic disease of the joints. So that's systemic, which means it just happens over and over. There's not like one big thing that causes it to happen, then it doesn't happen again. It's over and over. So rheumatoid arthritis, disease of the joints. Osteoarthritis is a degradation, kind of like almost like a dissolving or a wearing down of. So arthritis types, osteoarthritis, degradation, I guess this is the same thing. Here's some diagrams. So here's osteoarthritis. So normal knee bones, and then osteoarthritis. So things just start to kind of get pitted and degraded, and the joint follows. It's really tough. And you guys have seen maybe some older people that have their hands like this, right? Arthritis in their joints, and instead of the fingers looking more straight, they're kind of like, yeah, they bend, and oftentimes there's large deposits and of rheumatoid arthritis. It's very painful. It's hard to move, and sometimes you can kind of see that visually. Okay. Sprain. We talked about this already. A sprain is when ligaments sprains when ligaments Okay, okay, that's the bell. Let's pick this up here tomorrow. Muscle sprain, ligament sprain. Okay. All right, we'll finish tomorrow. See ya.